I would pray for Dad to come back to the church.
How can he not believe anymore? He's breaking his promise to me, to God.
I would say, please, please, please bless that Daddy will come back to the church.
What happens if I don't believe anymore? Is she still going to love me the way I am?
But now I kind of feel like me and him have a better connection now that he's not in the church.
I wish this wasn't happening.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Welcome to Unequally Yoked, the podcast for mixed faith couples.
It's like Halloween.
Yeah, well, we're close. And yesterday was Back to the Future Day, so
yeah, so
maybe I'll put some Back to the Future music underneath this. How cool would that be?
Anyway, this is Naomi Winters.
I'm Neal Winters.
And we're going to talk today about compromise.
Compromise?
Last time we left off trying to figure out what you would do if you can't figure out how to work it out. If you're feeling like you can't understand each other, you can't support each other, can't draw boundaries that you're willing to live with. You know, what are the things that we do to cope with that?
With each other and
yeah. And I mean, we talked to our therapist about this.
And what have we learned from our therapist?
It was really, really good, and I can't remember.
Okay. Well, let's go.
I should have written it down, but yeah.
So what's our first bit of discussion?
Where to start? Let's delve in with the kids.
Okay.
Because I think that's probably
the most contentious issue.
Yeah, really contentious. For me, one of my most serious fears. That's a lot of S.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of my biggest fears was you being so angry about the church and religion that you would want to take the kids away from it and just preach awful, horrible things about the things that I believe, and basically make me make a choice. Okay, either you leave the kids out of this religion or I'm gone. That was a huge fear of mine. From
the
get-go.
Okay. So the night we told the kids that I didn't believe, it was kind of a revelation to the whole family, right? We were sitting around and you asked me to bear testimony, Joseph Smith. I said I can't do it. I was not incredibly angry at that point.
Well, we didn't tell them at that point.
Yeah, but they probably had a guess or idea that I didn't believe.
I mean, kids aren't dumb. They catch up pretty fast on the unsaid, and so one by one, depending on their age and how curious or comfortable they feel talking to me, they would come up and say, what's going on? Why isn't Daddy going to church? And I wasn't going to hide it. I tried to say with as little emotional response as possible, Daddy isn't believing right now. He's still a good guy and we love him.
Right.
Like that. What else can you say?
Yeah.
And then we just go on.
So I'm trying to remember my when I started getting the most bitter about the church. I think it was the following week when I started going to non-denominational Christian church. And at that point, I was wanting to teach the kids the truth as I saw it, which was Christianity at the time, and now it would be more of a atheist, agnostic bent. But it is very tough not to teach the kids the things that I know. When I drive with them, I want to expound on what I know and what the historical issues are. And our oldest even is aware of some of the historical issues of the church, and she says that it helps her believe more So I guess there's that. I mean, I would rather them not believe at all.
Right.
I don't like the church. I don't like what it does to them. I don't like how it views women and my girls. But we made an agreement at the beginning of this thing to raise the kids Mormon. So
Right. Part of the reason why we came to that agreement was from the counselor. She said usually what's best for the kids is consistency and keeping as much the same as possible. So, if you decided you were going to raise your kids in this religion, then keep going. That's what they do. They go to church. And Dad, it's become more difficult for me. When you were in your angry stage, it was difficult for me because I wanted you to be able to tell them what you believed as far as values and what's right and wrong, and maybe what isn't as big a deal to you, even though that may not have jived with my feeling. But I didn't feel like it was fair to take what I believed and attack it, like going into the history and saying, here's what's wrong with your religion, here's why. I wanted you to present, here's what I believe, and here's why. And you were wanting to say...
I wanted to build a case against the church.
Against the church.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a being raised LDS, you are... Like, part of you is a missionary. Like, you want to tell people about what you believe, about how great it is. I remember teaching a class in Sunday school, talking to people who sold Pampered Chef, saying, you feel really good about Pampered Chef. You're not afraid to bring it up because it's just a course of your life. Why don't we feel the same way about the church?
About religion, yeah.
And I think that transfers over to a post-Mormon in terms of we found the truth, and we need to preach it. And we need to preach it. We need to share it and get people out of the church and out of its tentacles, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I found what I find to be the truth. It makes I feel more free. I feel more happy, and I don't know about more happy, but I want the kids to experience that. But at the same time, we agreed, and it's really tough. I mean, I don't really want to help get the kids ready for church. When we first started this, I did, but
passive aggressively.
Yeah, I hated it. I hated it.
Yeah. My personal counselor that I went to a couple times, she actually joined the church later in life, and I think she said she got married Baptist. I'm not exactly sure if that's correct. some form of Christianity, mainstream, I guess is what you'd call it. Anyway, when she joined the church and her husband was totally let down and wasn't happy about it, she said that's what she felt like was best for the kids. They stick with what they started with, what was agreed upon, and you just go with it. So,
time for questions.
Okay.
I think that seems to be the pattern. So as a member, she joined convinced that it was the truth, and you continue to go because you feel that it's the truth. How do you balance that, quote, knowledge with compromise? I mean, that's
what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's like, what do you have to tell yourself things? Do you have to ignore your feelings? How does that work?
How does it work for you? I mean, because we're both doing it. Let's give an example of where it kind of has worked, where we're not, neither with a compromise, neither of you are super happy about it, but you're willing to live with it.
Okay.
Modesty. We have differing opinions on what is modest and what is not. And I wanted to raise the kids with a certain type of modesty, and he now has changed that, his idea of what is okay. And so when one of our daughters started pushing the boundaries, and I was saying, no, you got to cover that up before you leave the house, he was like, she looks fine, she looks great, kind of undermining that. And so we had to talk about it, you know? So I'm not super thrilled with what came up. I had to give some, and I really didn't want to. But, when it came down to, this child was old enough that she could have left the house and worn whatever she wanted. She can get a job, she can earn money and go buy her own clothes. So I think just basically, what I told her is, when you're with me and I'm buying you clothes, I'm not going to buy that stuff. And there have been a couple times where she's come out and I said, Neal, what do you think? And even he was like, okay, no, those need to be longer,
Well, for me personally, it's a tough compromise. I mean, I want her to be modest and to wear clothes that cover up, but at the same time, I've subscribed to the feeling that it is the boys' responsibility to not look and to do what's right.
And I agree.
We shouldn't make our girls feel like they're responsible for boys' thoughts. I think that's rape culture.
Agree.
I think it's harmful.
I agree.
Which is why I'm more permissive than what I would have been had I not left the church. But that doesn't mean it's not hard for me to keep my mouth shut. She walks around home and I just want to slap her and say, cover up. On. I don't need to see those things hanging out all over the place. Yeah. But
would you please? My goodness. That means more from a dad.
Yeah, maybe I will.
I mean, that's the thing, is that I totally subscribe to what you're saying. Girls, for so long we try to make girls feel like they are responsible for the boys' thoughts, and that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Boys need to be in charge of their own thoughts. It is, for me, modesty is about what I'm telling the person, how I want to be treated and how I want to be looked at. It is a, what is that called? You're going to cut
an
that
outward
out, right?
expression of your inner beauty.
It's a message I'm sending, and I'm presenting myself to you, and I'm giving a certain idea, and based on that is how you're going to treat me. And I want my daughters to grow up with the idea that they are more than a piece of meat, that they don't need to represent themselves as, I am your sex toy. Welcome. I am free. I want them to grow up with, you have to treat me with respect. And this stuff, it's not for everyone to see. You earn it, Yeah.
But there's a happy medium, because like in Utah, somebody let's say in North Carolina where we live, a woman running with shorts and a sports bra on is just normal for everybody.
Not in Utah. You wear a t-shirt.
You wear a t-shirt, and if you do wear less, then the guys oogle and gaga at you because they're so used to not seeing that. So to me, it's a tough balance, because you don't. The more prohibited something is, the more attractive it can become. Whereas if it's just part of an everyday thing, you just accept it and you don't notice it and you move on.
Yeah. And it's a slippery slope to me, that whole argument, because how many things can you say that about? I mean, when do you draw the line? It's like you said, it's hard. It's a hard balance. When do you draw the line and say, okay, well, if we make murder a crime.
but there's right and wrong. I mean,
and that's what I'm saying. In my mind and in my heart, what I believe is right and wrong is different than what you believe is right and wrong. And so we, as parents, when it came up and it was a problem that needed addressing, because you do want to have a united front as parents, we had to talk about it and say, kind of what are we going to do? And it really came down to, we talked about and debated what we believed and tried to explain what we felt and thought. I don't like to use the word debate because...
Yeah, we discussed, can you...
Oh my gosh, I can't not talk with my hands.
We're in the Winter's Quarter studio is in our closet. So
we have not come out of the closet.
No.
So yeah, it was weird because at that moment, it just kind of, we looked at each other and I said, well, how about this? And you nodded and said, that sounds right. You know, we just kind of said, okay, well, we're not going to pay for this.
Yeah.
So,
which is fair.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. So what else have we compromised on with the kids?
Well, there's been things like keeping alcohol and coffee in the home, and things like what if they throw a fit about going to church. Things like,
well, let's.
I don't know what else has come up.
Well, alcohol and coffee was a big
really hard
thing
for me.
Yeah. We, before we left Utah, we didn't have alcohol or coffee in the home. There was one night when we were at
We had coffee.
We did have coffee, you're right.
And here's how that came to be. I'm so cheap. He was going out to get his coffee, like Starbucks. And
Beans and Brews in Utah.
Yeah, I mean, not
really
not like cheap, like McDonald's, but, and I'm like, okay, if you're going to go out every morning and do this, it's a lot cheaper to just do this in the home. And it took me a while to get used to the smell, and but it was fine. But alcohol, I do worry a lot about with the kids. I've seen alcoholics in my family.
Yeah.
It runs in my family, and I know the curiosity of some of the personalities of my children.
Yeah.
And so when we moved here, you had no neighbor that was like, can I store my stuff there?
Shout out to our former neighbor.
Yay, neighbors. We didn't know anyone, and our first neighborhood wasn't very friendly at all. So it was kind of like, well, where does he put it? Because then we're back into the same thing of you'd have to go out and get it, where you're going to spend $6-7 on a drink instead of, here.
So we bought a liquor cabinet,
which I made him put a lock on.
Yes.
Why is it so hard to find a liquor cabinet with locks? Can I just say that?
It's really tough.
It's really tough. He had to add hardware and put like a lock box, or what is that?
Well, I just bought a 6-inch long lock
and hook it.
And had to drill a couple holes so it was handles instead of knobs on the door.
And put that side up against
the wall
and just kind of slide it out.
It looks like a great decoration now.
Yeah. I don't like the wine being out, but honestly, our kids think it smells disgusting.
Yeah.
So they're not going to touch the stuff.
I think it tastes great. I love the smell of red wine.
So that and beer I'm not too worried about. And we have tried really hard to tell our kids we would rather, if you are interested and thinking of dabbling in this, we would rather us know about it and have you do it, with us the first time or something, so that we can make sure you're safe. And we've also said, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're drunk, you're at a party, you call us. I don't care what time of night it is. We get you. You don't drive home with friends who've had a drink or two. You don't try to hide it. We come, we get you. We say nothing. We keep you safe.
Yeah.
And we can talk about it later, and you're not going to die and get in trouble,
Yeah, I think one thing about this whole transition for me is that I am more willing to, or I'm a lot more open with the kids than I used to be, or than I would have otherwise been. I mean, you heard from our podcast with our daughter, the frank talk about sex. And just like anything, it's better to broach the subject and address it head on, in my opinion, than it is to just let them go off and dabble without our knowledge. I mean, it's a lot safer to know and to help prevent unwanted side effects than it is to just have them out there doing willy-nilly whatever they want.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we don't teach them not to.
And what I want to preach is you don't do that, and here's why. There's this and this and this and this danger. If you're going to break us, if you're going to break the rules, we're here still. We're not your enemy, because what we care about most is your safety.
Yep.
So that has been really hard because, you know, you grow up and you think black and white, right? Wrong. If you say, but if you break it, then aren't you kind of giving them permission? You know, so there's that whole debate. But at this point in my home, they are getting two different sides of their parents think two different things are okay. And so it became important to, rather than them plot against us or hide things from one of us or the other, it became important to be one and to say, what's the most important thing here? And of course, the most important thing here is our relationship and the safety of our kids. So that's where we try to come from in teaching that. But it's not always easy. No,
it's not. I mean, we have disagreements. We're usually pretty good at discussing them. But just back to the coffee really quick. That was kind of a passive-aggressive move on my part to go out and buy coffee.
Oh, I know. I absolutely know that. And that's the other thing we were going to talk about, was the reason why this came up of guilt and shame in my mind was, man, do we use that against people to try to get the behavior that we want. And we don't even realize we're doing it. It's not like we want them to feel horrible about themselves. We just want to, get our way.
Right.
And so it's funny you mentioned passive aggressive, because I remember when you quit wearing your religious garb.
Underwear.
Your religious, I will say garb. Usually a lot of religions have some sort of religious wear or jewelry or something that is meaningful to them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you started really hating them and not wearing them, there's this part of me, I'm sitting there folding the laundry and I didn't want to wash your underwear. And I thought, what would happen if I just put them back dirty?
I would have just bought more.
I know. And I was like, that's stupid. You love the guy. It's underwear, So I folded it and I didn't want to deal with it. But it kind of goes back to when I asked you to clean the bathroom and you admitted later you did a crappy job, so I wouldn't ask you again.
Yeah. So do you still have that stuff boxed up, or did you get rid of it?
I got rid of it. I boxed it up for a long time, partly because I wanted to know the date.
When I stopped wearing?
When it was done.
Did you put the...
I put the date.
Did you feel like someone died or something?
Yes. Someone did die, Neal.
Uh-huh. And I was reborn as a new person.
A lot of people are going to be like, that's harsh, or feel bad about that, but you have to admit, you changed.
I did, and our relationship changed.
And I have changed because of this, and we have changed, and the change is very, very big with you.
Yeah.
Very big.
If you...
The man I married and live with right now is in a lot of ways, a very different man than...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am.
They're different.
Yeah. Does that bother you?
It's hard.
Still.
Sometimes it's hard because one of the things that I find myself doing when these things come up and I'm just having a really difficult time, I wrote down some of my strategies of how I deal with anger, how I deal with...
Your anger or my anger?
Both.
Okay.
And how I deal with feeling this loss of this person that I married, you know.
Do you still mourn it?
Yeah, sometimes I do. In fact, I'm wondering, after this, I wonder if you mourn the loss of that person sometimes.
No.
Never?
No, not.
I mean, because there are things about that you miss the music.
I miss the music. I miss
the social.
I miss the relationships I had as a youth. That's like when I think back about my teenage years, the super activities that I went on, the fun times I had, bearing my testimony, the good feeling. I miss that. I really do. Like
stuff.
Yeah. It was a good experience. It was, my parents raised me well, and they gave me a lot of good experiences. But at the same time, I don't believe anymore, and so
that's what was hard, was when it was really fresh, all I could see and yearn for was what I now didn't have in you. You know, you didn't want to pray, you didn't want to give us blessings, you didn't want to come to church with us, you didn't want to go to the temple, or whatever it was, whatever's on your list, ladies or men. I guess it is reverse. I just get a lot more.
Hello, ladies.
All the single ladies, right? No, they're not. Anyway, take that out. What was I saying?
You were saying that all these things.
Oh, so when I had to figure out how I was going to get over mourning the loss of this person, I found some things that worked. And the first thing that I tried to do, not the first thing, because the first thing I did was, not productive stuff. But anyway, when I get past that...
What types of not productive things?
Anger, crying, depression, lashing out.
You didn't lash out at me.
God.
Uh-huh.
Probably also a little bit of trying to bargain with you. And that's where the shaming, I think, probably came in, where it was, but you promised me, we
had a contract.
We had a contract. Yeah, I don't think I ever used the word contract.
Right, but
that makes it seem like a business deal, and it wasn't.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same. We had a solid agreement. We'd made covenants.
This is what we decided.
I married you under those pretenses.
Yes, and I guess I was kind of thinking, well, if he tries hard enough, he'll come back. He'll believe it this way. He quit praying, or he quit, reading the scriptures. He quit getting spiritually fed. So we just have to get him spiritually fed again, and then he'll come back.
I was doing
right?
all the things that the church says not to do that make you lose your testimony. When the church says, don't stop praying, don't stop reading your scriptures, the more you do it, the more you're going to
don't break commandments.
Yeah. And I was past that. I mean, I had tried reading, and it didn't do anything for me. So I was done.
Yeah.
I was done. I didn't want to try anymore. 5 years of trying and faking it was more than enough for me, and it all just blew up one night.
Yeah. So, one of my stages that was not productive was that. Still going through, it's not over, not accepting. So arriving at acceptance had, I guess, those stages of grief, right?
Yeah.
And just a lot of mourning. So some of the things that worked for me when I went through that was trying to remember core things that I loved about you now and focusing on those. And I have a pre-made list. I have done this several times in our marriage where I make a pre-made list of things that I love about you. Some of the times it's been for you to read because you're feeling down. And sometimes I just like to have it handy for if I'm mad at you, or, if I've forgotten and all I'm seeing are faults. I want to go back and remember, oh yeah, those faults aren't important because this is what matters, and he has this, So for me, a pre-made list has really helped. And I had a journal at once where I wouldn't even write phrases or even a full sentence or anything. Sometimes it was just words.
You just jab your pen into the book like you were stabbing it?
Whatever I was feeling at night, because at nighttime is when you kneel down and you pray, right? And so I kind of had this block between me and the divine because I had all these icky feelings. And so all my prayers were like, this sucks. What's going on? What am I supposed to do? And, it wasn't productive. So I had this book where I would write things like, whatever I was feeling, mad, hate, whatever came to my mind and can't. And it was very weird what came to my mind because I wouldn't even process it. And then I would look back at it and go, oh, I didn't realize that was in my head. I didn't realize I was thinking that. And once I looked at that, I could go, oh, okay, well, I got to do something about that. What does that mean in my life? What am I going to do with that?
Was it harder for you when I was home or when I was on the road?
I don't know.
Like, were you writing these things in your journal at night while I was gone, or did I come home and make you really angry?
No,
and then you wrote it.
It was just all the time. It was just my process of trying to figure out. And because you feel so much all at once, and you don't want to. You don't want to be mad. I didn't want to. I didn't want to be mad. I didn't want to be thinking over and over again about how it should be this way, or could have been this way, or what could I have done, or how could this be different? And I thought it was going to be this way, My youth groups never prepared me for this. How do I do this? This was not what I learned in Sunday school, and I don't know. I just, anyway, that helped me. And also counseling helps a lot. Another thing that I use so much with my kids, especially in the heat of the moment, is a simple, deep cleansing breath, as they say. It just... I think naturally we do that, but sometimes we forget, and some people don't have that natural tendency, but to just take a minute, stop everything, and just blow it out, and take a minute, and then start again. Okay, now,
Yeah.
So that, preoccupying myself, just keeping busy was another one. Venting, you have to be careful.
Who did you vent to?
That's the thing. You have to be really, really careful, because if you want a good, positive, productive venting session, you have to have someone that's not going to judge the other person, that's not going to take your side, but is still going to validate you. And then at the end, turn around and say, well, you kind of have to realize this is probably where they're coming from, because that's a good friend. That's a good listener.
Was that your mom?
It was my mom a lot, but I held a lot back.
I think I was still going. I was still going when
she was
sick.
That was during that. The truth was I didn't have somebody. And every now and then I would find a friend where we'd have a really good moment and we'd talk. But it was mostly Heavenly Father. Mm-hmm. It was prayer.
You didn't really have a lot of friends. I mean, you had a relative in this situation. I
isolated myself like none other. I was so very depressed and didn't know what to do, like how to respond, how to act, what people thought about acting towards me. So I just kind of acted like everything was normal in our house. I don't think people where we lived, most people didn't know until like 2 weeks before we left. When I said something in Relief Society, I said like a comment like, even though Neal doesn't believe, he's a wonderful man, and there are plenty of members of the church that are not, and we were talking about something anyway. I felt like it was a pertinent
Comment.
to make.
How did they react?
Oh, yeah, you're right. And then somebody after church came up to me and said, "Oh, Naomi, I'm so sorry, I didn't know." And
did they think I was like... I mean,
you were traveling.
Oh.
They thought you were traveling and you couldn't come.
They didn't know I was going to another church.
The bishop did, maybe, and a couple of good friends. But no, it wasn't, they didn't know.
Yeah, because my unbelief only started about a year before my openness about my unbelief only started about a year before we left. So yeah, I guess that makes sense.
And even then, I didn't realize how far gone you were. Like, it wasn't like you just, I don't know. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, preoccupying myself really worked. So I really got into the kids and also into the antidepressants, just to be honest. Going for a walk, exercising. And for me, I don't know why, but doing some cleaning when I am upset or feeling this way makes me feel better because I feel like I'm getting the yuck out of my life. And it's something I have control over. Also, weeding. I used to yell at those weeds.
Oh, really?
Oh, my gosh. I yelled at him. You disobedient. Yeah, I yelled at him and pull him out and throw him.
Was this this was in our yard with neighbors around?
Yeah, and you can't tell that I weeded, but they were gone at work during the day. Nobody heard
so you
me.
were, all right.
Yeah.
Good, because I don't want you to embarrass me in front of our
Yeah,
neighbors.
I'm so embarrassing.
Do you still have these feelings?
Sometimes they come back. Yeah.
For lack of a better comparison, kind of like missing your mom. It's always a part of your life.
And the time that it comes back is when we're having difficulty stating our boundaries and somehow both of us being okay with that. Because if one of us isn't going to back down, that's what we're talking about. What do you do?
Yeah.
So one of the things that the therapist talked about was keeping in mind that your spouse does not have to be this Disney picture of perfect. Nobody marries this whole package of everything that they want. And it changes throughout time. It's always changing. Every marriage does, no matter whether you're in this situation or not. And so you're getting a whole package. And so taking a step back and looking at things where you would say, this was an absolutely this way for me. It was an absolute for me. Okay, well,
having a priesthood holder was like,
absolute.
What, number 1 or 2 on your list of eligible bachelors?
Number 1 on my list was being in the same place religiously. And number 2 was communicating.
Well, fortunately, number 2 is still fairly high.
It's coming back.
So, okay, boundaries.
Yeah. So anyway, the therapist, one of the things he said was, you have to take a step back and you have to say, okay, this is who I'm married to, the things that I like, the package that I love, and remember that you are wanting to make them happy, that you are wanting to make this work, instead of focusing on how pissed they're making you and unreasonable they are and why did they feel this way and how could they possibly see it. And then you go back to that place where he would have never been this way before. Why can't I have that, Neal? Why can't I go back to that husband? What happened? And then you're back in the same spot where you're just going through the stages of grief and mourning and being angry.
Well, okay, so I want to talk a little bit about boundaries in the other direction.
Okay.
Boundaries that I feel like the church crosses in the way they communicate with my kids about me.
Yeah, and I have had to spend quite a bit of time, which I naturally did this, But I have tried to reassure you that I do this, that I take the kids after certain lessons or aside, and I make sure that I tell them the spin that I have on why these messages that are sometimes received this way is not the message that I want them to get.
Yeah. This is me getting a little bit angry and emotional.
Yes.
There's a lot of question of why, you're mad because you know it's true, or you've left the church but you can't leave it alone. And here's the truth. I would be able to leave the church alone a lot more if they left me alone. For example, in the most recent General Conference, one of the presidency members of the church in priesthood session gave a very spiritually damaging talk, talking about how unbelievers have lost the light, how you need to just work to believe, and he set aside real legitimate concerns that even people who are questioning have. And when I hear that type of rhetoric from the high up leadership of the church, number one, I'm grateful that my kids aren't seeing it. And number two, it makes me mad because it paints a bad picture, a very black and white picture about me, not only to my children, but also to our friends. I mean, I've had friends tell me things that I'm like, you don't even know how I feel. Yeah. You're just making this assumption that I deep down believe, and are setting aside all this time, all this heartache that I've gone through for this lifestyle, or for this chosen for this belief. I mean, to say somebody doesn't believe, or that somebody is mad because deep down they know that it's true, is very naive. And I think it's unfair of the church leadership to cast us in this light, because we have legitimate concerns, we have legitimate reasons why we feel the way we feel, and to devalue those can harm relationships among family members. Yeah.
So we've only alluded a little bit to this because the kids haven't had that a lot, and sometimes if they start feeling that way, they'll bring it up to me, and I take them aside and I say, we're not the regular family, so not everything they say is going to directly apply to what we think is going on. This is not how it happened for Dad. This is how it happened for Dad. This is, not what I believe about Dad because of ABC. This is what I think about him. And it could just as easily be us that had changed our minds. And I try to do it in a way that does not negate what church leadership says or doctrine. Which,
how do you do that?
Yeah, that seems really weird to you, but to me, it works.
Well, I mean, how has your opinion of non-believers changed since I went through this?
So much.
Like, what do you how so? Like, what did you used to believe and what do you believe now, or think?
Do you really want to know?
Yes, I want to know. I mean, I know like I've said before, I know what we speculated about non-believers when I still believed. So go ahead.
For me, a lot with non-believers, I didn't think about it. I just didn't get it. I was just like, okay, that doesn't make sense to me. And so I kind of, most of the time, I left it alone and I focused on relationships. Even when I had a family member that would, talk to me about how do I deal with this, it was, about relationships. It was, we don't have to know why or how. I didn't have to speculate on that.
Well,
to me, those talks were about warnings to the person who still is believing or trying to believe of what to avoid.
So do you think that that people just leave the church willy-nilly, or do you think they usually have reasons?
I think you get all types of people that leave the church for all types of reasons.
Well, I remember you had a friend that you used to say, I know she still knows that it's true, but she just doesn't want to live up to what it teaches.
I've had people that tell me that.
They just don't want to live the lifestyle.
They're like, I know it's true. I'm not into it right now. I gotta do this other stuff.
I've had someone tell me that.
Yeah. And I had somebody that came to church every week, and the bishop knew that was where she was at. And he's like, when you're ready, come talk to me. But we all knew she was out drinking and partying and doing stuff with guys. But she believed it, and she wanted to be at church, and we were happy to have her, So wherever you're at, I don't know, whatever gospel you were raised in was honestly very different than the gospel I was raised in.
Well, I have, like I've said before, I'm a part of a group of spouses spouses who no longer believe, whose significant other still does, and there are stories from that group of people losing their family because the believing member couldn't handle the spouse leaving.
Yeah.
And that's tragic.
Yeah.
That's what would you say?
There's a lot that goes into why you stay with a person. And a change of religion is just, I think, the tip of the iceberg of what actually changes in a marriage and in a relationship, in a person. I think ideally that's what you deal with, not the actual change. But it's a whole change of ideology, and when you do that, it changes directions of where you want to go in life. And when you have a marriage, you originally wanted the same things. You were moving in the same direction. And so now you have to look at this partnership and you have to say, well, what same things do we want? What are we aiming for? Is that enough? Is that what's going to happen?
Did you ever consider ending our marriage?
Yes.
How often?
And so did you.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, let's not pretend that that we're perfect, but since you're on the hot seat.
For a long time I felt screwed, like I couldn't. Not financially, not with the kids. Just felt like I couldn't. Wasn't an option, which I hated. And it's not like I thought about it a lot because I was like, well, it's just not an option, so I didn't think about it, And then some things happened that were different. And I decided I didn't want to be too rash, that I wanted to wait and see.
There was one day when we were convinced that it was over.
You were.
I was, yeah.
I just tried to think, process what you had told me.
Yeah. I was,
It's, we're different people. I don't think I love you.
Yeah.
And, that's the worst thing to hear. That was, what you told me, all the crap you told me, and out of all the crap that you told me, you would think this would not be the important part, but that was what hurt the most.
It still does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No matter how often I apologize.
Yeah, or how much you tell me that's not true. There's always, you said it. You can't take it back. So I'm always going to be like, is today a day where he loves me or he doesn't love me? But throughout the day, I probably took 2 hours where I was crying and couldn't talk,
I went into the bathroom and cried a lot.
Well, good.
I did. Then I went to a NASCAR race. At
Guilt
the
and
Hall of
shame
Fame.
all around on you because, no, I'm just kidding. But,
It just makes you feel good to know
Yeah.
that I was in the same.
but then I
didn't-
tried to look at it and I was like, he loves me. And here's why. And I started looking at stuff and I was like, what is he thinking? Of course he loves me, you know? So I was ready to tell him why he loved me when we saw each other later that night, and he had already realized he did love me.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need some separation. For me, it was a day.
Yeah.
Just not a full day, just, 6-7 hours to go and regroup and to...
Now, mind you, this happened after a completely calm conversation. There was no yelling. There wasn't name calling. There were questions and answers and telling how you felt. And I got ready for church and went to church and spent the day in the bathroom crying, hiding in a stall. But
That was not a good day.
it wasn't a good day.
It's a horrible day.
And so if you're there, if you're in that place, to me, I would say don't do anything rash. You need to take a long time. I kind of took the idea that if there are any signs of life left in a marriage, you try to save it.
We still do have
A lot of
a
signs.
few signs.
Shut up, a lot of signs, jerk. So, yeah, I mean, I thought of that way, and at first when you're in shock, you're kind of like, well, there goes my eternity, you know?
Well,
We're going to be in two different places now, so what's the point of being married,
yeah.
you know? And you become, I think, at least for me, I became more and more okay with unknowns. Because that's what was hardest for me, I think, through all of this was things were known, they were set, I had this steady foundation. And it was all agreed upon and life was laid out. It was all there. And then it was ripped out from under me and I had nothing. I was just floating going, what about this? What about that? What about this?
What about all of our spiritual experiences? What about the time when you...
And what
blah,
does
blah.
that mean for this future? What does it mean for the kids? What does it mean for that? I don't know. And there's a whole lot of I don't knows.
I think one of the hardest things for religious people or someone coming out of religion is to not know. Because when you're in religion, your eternity... you're living for the hereafter. You're living for the potential of living with God or whatever your version of heaven is. And all of a sudden, you're ripped out of religion and you no longer believe. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
What's out there for me? What? And I always thought about it from my perspective. I kind of like it. I think it's fun not to know and to discover. I didn't realize that it did that to you as well.
I had so many panic attacks. It was ridiculous.
Did you really?
Oh, gosh, yes. If I didn't know what they were, I would have gone to the ER thinking I was having a heart attack.
That bad? Like,
yeah.
When I
couldn't breathe. It was, it was awful. But I don't want to go there. The point is, in those situations, when you're feeling this awful stuff, it's really easy to just spiral around that. And that seems to be when you want to make a decision because you don't want to feel that way anymore. So something's got to change, right? And so my advice would be, don't. Just stop and say, I'm not going to feel this way tomorrow. I don't know how I'm going to feel tomorrow, but I won't feel this way. And I need some time, and things change, and they have a way of blooming and becoming more apparent. And so I'm going to let that happen a little bit more before I decide anything. I'm going to wait and see. So I've kind of developed this wait and see attitude, which has helped with drawing boundaries and with, getting along with things that we don't agree upon.
Yeah, and it's still, like, emotionally, it's still an emotional daily challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still, I said earlier that I don't want to go back. I miss having that same footing, that same belief. So it feels like every day the sky is about to fall.
Yes.
To me.
Yes.
Still. I mean.
Yes. And so that's kind of the mindset that I go into more, that I think has helped with us negotiating or figuring out what to do. I don't think we try to deal with these house rules until it's really coming up, which seems counterintuitive to me. You'd think you'd need to set up exactly everything of how you're going to run your house.
It's not realistic.
But doing it all at once, wholly overwhelming. So just as things came up, when daughter started questioning Modesty and it was bugging me and not him, we had to have a conversation. When the coffee was costing too much. Thank you for your passive aggressiveness.
Chalk one up for me.
Yay, Team Neal. Okay, so, yeah, I don't know. But one of the things that you have to have ground rules. And the ground rules are no name calling.
Unless it's in the bedroom. And it's a good thing.
Anyway, so not name calling, and trying to not guilt or shame, and avoiding what did you just say it was?
I don't remember.
Passive aggressive.
Passive aggressive.
Avoiding the passive aggressive. And here's a couple more rules, I think. You cannot discuss this stuff where you're not agreeing on, and it's important to present a solid face to the kids in front of them, because there is going to be friction and they don't need to have that stress and anxiety. So I think, and the counselor was saying that, leave the kids out of it.
And we do.
Yeah. And then another one is you need, like, a rule for me is how you portray your spouse when they're not around to your kids. I think it's so wrong and disrespectful to portray them as anything other than wonderful. Mm-hmm. Because you want both parental authorities to matter, to be important, to be trusted, and you want them to think we're in love and we're on the same page. So if you're feeling like you can't do that and you want to say something really snobby, go write it in your journal and you just bite your tongue and say nothing. Go to that really good friend that is good at listening and validating, but then at the end tells you how it really is and tries to help you see the other side. How
often have you wanted to turn to our daughters who you have a really good relationship with?
So much.
Have you ever?
Yes. And so have you.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be accusatory.
And our daughter, she's so amazing. Again, another plug for therapy. But, I mean, she's come up and said, look, I can't be in the middle of this anymore. I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this, A, B, C. And what do I do? And so I've told her, when Dad says this, just clearly say, I don't want to hear this. When I say this, you look at me and you remind me, this isn't my business, And we're getting better at that. I think we're really good at that right now, which is probably why she's acting so much more grown up.
It's probably a lot easier when your parents aren't dumping their stresses on you.
Which I didn't think we did very much, but it's...
But she feels it.
I mean, they're not stupid. That's the thing. Kids pick up on everything. And, so, I mean, the littlest thing of, so, how was Dad's day? And after he calls at lunch, how's he doing? And you're like, fine. Yeah, well, what do you think they're getting from that message? You know, whatever, you know?
Yeah, it can be tough to, I mean, I've said things to our daughter that she told you about that were like, oops, sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
Back up, never mind.
And that's, I mean, kind of back to the original part of this, the beginning point was drawing boundaries and not and compromising on how you raise your kids. And I think it's really easy to want to expound your knowledge to your kids, and it's difficult not to. I have gotten a lot better. I don't say nearly as much. I bottle it up. I've got a group that I go to kind of vent. I don't vent about you.
Right.
I just vent
Try
about
not to make it personal.
Yeah.
Opinions that drive you nuts.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm sure you feel like you feel attacked or
I do.
you feel it personally.
Yeah.
Which
I try really hard to be one of those people that simply shares and presents what they believe, how they believe, here's why, without taking or knocking down somebody else's idea. And I know that's really hard and I don't always succeed at all, but that's super important to me. Like I like to hear about other people's religions. I want to know what they see, how they believe, not because I want to tear them down, because I want to know. It interests me, you know, and I'm not going to use that information against them to go, well, here's why you're wrong.
I wish the leadership of the church would do that.
Yeah. Well, and I think the attitude is they mostly want to do that. That's the idea. And
it's the idea, but they're bleeding members, and so they're attacking the non-believers.
They're not singling out a certain person, a certain religion.
They're stereotyping.
Which you have to when you're talking about so many subjects. It has to be a broad term.
Yeah, but they're stereotyping a group of people.
Perhaps a group that I don't think you belong in, which is why I tell the kids, hey, guess what? We're the exception to the rule. You know, yes, some of what they're saying is true. It just happens to not we're not part of that, you know? Mm-hmm. So. Okay.
Well.
You know what? Can I do something, though, that I think may help people and hopefully you'll like it? I found... Shut up. I found one of my pre-made lists from a while ago.
Okay.
And I actually went and modified some of it. I did.
For purposes of this?
No, because some of the things that I had on here that I love about you are different now.
Okay. Let's hear how great I am.
Okay. I actually entitled it Ways Neal Already Communicates His Love for Me.
Okay.
He compliments freely. He shows off my talents and things he likes about myself to others. He's so proud of me. He helps with house chores and encourages kids to do so. Mind you, none of this is always.
No, it's not. No.
And I won't say too much about this, but I put physically, he communicates his love to me in a very not selfish way. Thank you. Makes me feel beautiful. Values my opinions. He's respectful about prayers when we want to pray. He doesn't sit there and, you know, even though it's not something he does, he doesn't sit there and talk through it or, you know, clink his dishes or whatever.
I do wink at the kids if they look at me.
Well, I better erase that from... No, I'm just kidding. Erase that from my list. It's really important to him to do, like, family vacations and make memories and do things together. He encourages me to fill my own cup when I need to make sure that I'm doing things for myself. He doesn't put me down. He builds me up. He doesn't complain on the many occasions I drop the ball, like when I missed making dinner or shopping, or the house is a mess, or he doesn't have clean socks, or whatever it is of how we divide up household chores. He seems to be really understanding about that. He makes me laugh. He listens. He validates my feelings, helps me not be so hard on myself, works his butt off to support this family, and never complains about how we've spent all his money.
Well, I spend all my money too. But that's another subject.
Oh, I like that. Works his butt off. Anyway, apologizes freely, sometimes too much, meaning I don't want him to feel at fault. Waits to watch the shows that I like, that he knows I like, with me. Lets me sleep and feeds the kids sometimes when I'm really, really tired, haven't slept well.
All the feminists are going to be mad.
I know, right?
Because
here's the thing.
You're saying all these things that are like housewife-ish.
If you start listening, though, here's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping when you listen to some of these ideas, it sparks ideas that are kind of unique to your spouse, you know? Like, communication was number 2 to me, right? Religion was first. I had never found somebody that communicated like I did. To be able to communicate with one another the way that we do, in a calm way where we're not like fighting crazy, that was really important to me. And so I hang on to that. And I hang on to these little moments when you do load the dishwasher. I don't always, I'm not going to go down and go, he never loads the dishwasher. I write down after you did load the dishwasher, oh, hey, he helped me with chores, So you remind yourself, it has happened in the past. Let's see, where was I? Let's me see. Supports. You don't work super hard against the kids going to church, even though you know how hard that is. I know how hard that is for you. And it's not like you sit there and discourage them. Don't go, when you know they don't want to go.
But I don't like...
You don't like it.
I don't like it, and I don't... Like, if they're saying I don't want to go, I usually will just keep my mouth shut. I don't really say, well, you promised to go.
Yeah. But it's a really nice opportunity that you could jump in and be really nasty. And you're really respectful about just letting things be consistent, even though it's bleh for you. So sorry about that. That sounded so bad.
No, it didn't.
I probably shouldn't say this, so I won't.
What?
He tries to be happy and patient. He wants his family to feel his love, i.e., you care about how we interpret love and are willing to speak love in our language, not necessarily how you would say it, but you try to identify how. Well, you really do.
Okay. I still speak love in language that is familiar to me.
Well, doesn't everyone?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we do it, but I've actually heard you give thought about that to our kids, and I think they need this, and I think they need that. And you've asked me, okay, what do you need me to do? Because you thought you were telling me what I needed to hear, or you thought that you were showing a certain emotion or love to me, and I wasn't getting it. It's really important to you that the kids don't fear you. You want them to be able to come to you. And sometimes you have written me wonderful notes and cards. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you've ordered me flowers or brought me flowers. And this is such an important one, which you don't do anymore because it's our daughters, but you took care of the dog. I hate taking care of the dog. And if I were going to add things now, I am so glad I told you this just like I think this week. I'm so glad that you always take the garbages out. I hate taking the garbages out. I can't remember to do it. I can always just count on you to take the garbages out.
I hate taking the garbages out, too.
Anyway, you write silly things when you notice something good. You go and you write it down. So during the times that it's all you see is the awful, you go back and you go, oh, wait a second. Oh, yeah. And you go, this other crap doesn't matter.
Right. Sometimes it does, though. sometimes it does.
But it doesn't go on forever most of the time.
No, it passes.
It ebbs and flows, and if you have two people that are really willing to try to make each other happy, most of the time you can do that.
Yeah.
Not always, but most of the time.
Okay. Well, we're
so out of time.
Yeah, we are out of time. Thank you for your thoughts, Naomi. We'd like to thank Naomi and Neal for participating.
You're welcome, Neal. Make a list.
Yeah. So
make a list this week. It's fun.
We are actually looking at going on another podcast. Ooh. We have an appointment on Sunday to get interviewed for another podcast. I'm not going to say which one because, it's scheduled to appear.
Them.
I'm not going to say.
Well, how are they going to know what to... You'll say after we've done it.
We'll say after we've done it. I'm not going to say anything this week, but I'm really excited because this is a podcast that I love. It's probably my favorite one. And
it's an atheist one.
It's not. It's a former Mormon one. It's not atheist.
Oh, it's not atheist.
It's not atheist. It's
okay. So I'm not on my home turf, peeps.
No, you're not on your home turf. But
they play nice.
They play nice. You've talked to the person who is going to be talking about this.
Yeah, super nice.
Yeah, and
he said he was a big fan of mine, so
yeah,
flattery gets very far with me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I can't wait. So, and the other thing I am thinking of doing is setting up a Patreon account. It's not that I want a ton of money, but doing a podcast is not free.
He spent way too much money, people, to get set up. And financial bumps are ahead for us. And anyway, if you have it in your heart to give a little something back for any words that you might appreciate, it would be nice.
Yeah, I'll have a Patreon account established by the time that this is released. So, and then once it's established, next week we'll give you a little bit more information. But right now, just know that it's going to be out there, and we don't expect you to contribute by any means, but it would be helpful. So there's that. I think that's about everything. We've got some other announcements coming up in a few weeks, depending on how some things pan out. But
give them the website.
Oh, our website, www.unequally-yoke.net. You can like our page on Facebook, facebook.com/unequallyyokepodcast. And then we also have the secret group, which has a grand total of about 7 members right now. I am me, and let me know if you're interested, and I will do my best to get back to you. I haven't checked my messages for a while.
I am not always great at responding quickly. Okay, I probably never am, but I certainly read them, and there's been some comments that have meant a lot to me, and especially one particular that wrote a note to me privately, and it meant a lot. It was very timely.
Oh, that's good.
So thank you.
All right. I think it should be a drinking game. Like anytime Naomi cries,
I have to take a drink.
No, the people who are listening.
Okay, because I was gonna be like, I'd be so drunk and bawling by the end. Shut up.
Or else do an over/under how many times Naomi's gonna cry in an episode.
Yeah. Okay.
There's nothing wrong with you.
We could put that on the website.
Yeah. Number of Naomi cries
How
this
many
episode.
cries do you guess?
Okay, well...
Hey, you got emotional, too.
Tonight?
I think you did.
I did. Yeah, I was... yeah.
And they're not actual tears. They're just wet.
They're just wet. I don't see any...
Nothing dropped. Doesn't count.
Yeah. Well...
Oh, I love you. Love you guys. And we'll talk later.
Yep. Bye-bye.